Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Run4Ben Podcast. This is part 2 of our interview with Josh Ansley. If you missed part 1, I recommend checking it out. We'll provide links in the show notes. Please note there are some audio issues, and we had a camera issue as well, but the conversation was really incredible, and we're so grateful that Josh was sharing his story with us. So without further delay, here is part 2 of our interview with Josh Ansley.
I got sober in 2019. My dad passed in 2024, so I had a good 5 years of knowing how to show up for my sobriety. Taught me to show up in difficult situations for my dad, and that talking about difficult things was okay. And KIRK GIBSON has been huge on breaking that stigma that can come with Parkinson's as well, to just go out to get help, to talk about it. And that's why he leads with that, is because he's showing other people how to show up in these difficult situations. And that is so much like the things I learned in sobriety. The other part was that suffering alone, not only for those, I don't have experience with being a person with Parkinson's, but I understand that's a big thing, but also for the people, and this is big for me, is the caregivers. Oftentimes you can think, and I've thought this a lot of times, especially doing this documentary, is I don't want to pull any attention because I'm not dealing with this. I don't want to say, hey, I'm having a tough day, when somebody beside me has Parkinson's. How could I have a tough day compared to them? My mom had times when and I did too, when I would be frustrated with my dad for things that he was trying to do. So the more we talk about it and relate to, yeah, sometimes you're going to be upset. Sometimes you're going to be frustrated. Sometimes you're going to want to not have to deal with it, and that's okay for you as a caregiver to feel that, and to prioritize what's going on in your life as well. That's not only good for you, but it's also good for the people in your life that may be diagnosed with Parkinson's. They need you. And this is one of the things that my sponsor told me early in sobriety, is you have to put your oxygen mask on first before you're going to be able to help somebody else out. If you have, in the same, the other saying is, you can't give what you don't have. So as a caregiver, if you're empty, if you deprioritize any of your feelings, what you need, your rest, your ability, then you're not going to show up with anything. So it's important on both sides. And you brought that to the table from somebody with young onset Parkinson's. And then on the other side for me is to tell those caregivers to make sure you take that time, make sure that you have somebody to talk with, make sure that you don't, have isolate, and don't take care of yourself, because, that's important for all of us to be able to show up with our full, and as you said, authentic selves, and of course, our true self, and I'm certainly not the person to come up with that at all, but many people who I've read and respect say that that's the goal, right?
We're getting real. This stuff is real. Like when my fiance was talking about the fears of, like, that she didn't know if she could do it. Like, that's just the reality. But it's also okay to understand that these feelings, which we then internalize and feel guilty about, is a natural and normal thing. When I was in the hospital, it's amazing how the work just continues. But one of the things that the doctor said to me is like, do you feel guilty at being sick? And I can't believe I didn't even realize that. Of course I felt guilty at being sick. It was overwhelming guilt at being sick. That, again, like I mentioned, how am I going to take care of my family? What's going to happen? And I still don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like, but it's right now, it's okay. My guitars are still on the wall. I haven't had to sell them, and it's whatever it happens. That's, I don't know what the future is going to look like. It's a powerful thing to recognize these layers that I didn't know that I had, this guilt that was tearing me apart, and on a side note, a little bit tangential, but it's along the same lines of just the constant growth. when they asked me, and they said to me, what are your coping mechanisms? I remember the social worker in the hospital asked me, like, what are your coping mechanisms? And I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to answer this question now every day for the next 3 months. Like, my coping mechanisms are playing music. And as soon as I said it, like in this sort of just rattling it off sort of way, I realized, oh my God, playing music is not a coping mechanism right now. It's one of my biggest triggers. And I hadn't even realized that. And it was a profound recognition of, like a checking in with myself, with somebody who thought he was like really aware of himself. And it's a danger to think I actually do know myself, or that I've arrived in some way. It's like if you think you've arrived, then there's somewhere else to go. I don't know what the proper metaphor is, or what the hell I'm talking about, but it's just this. It's okay to feel. Going back to, like, it's okay to feel whatever we feel, even if those are awful things, and this is things that we wouldn't want to share with anybody and stuff. And so to have that space to recognize that we're a textbook, to be like, to have this shameful feeling and share it with a community member who's like, yes, that's completely normal. I feel like that about my husband all the time, or whatever it is, it's such a relief, or it has been, at least in my life. I want to not forget too, because it was really powerful, that what you shared before about finding the organization, the Kurt Gibbons organization. For me, it was Light of Day organization, which is, I had this amazing opportunity, with my band Least of Thieves. I'm like, with my band Least of Thieves, it's, a big milestone in my life to have made this record. There's the album cover. And to have made this record and released it, and then reached out to, for you, it was, sports oriented. And for me, it was music oriented. Light of Day is an organization that puts on many shows, and has a Winterfest every year in Asbury Park in New Jersey. And, Bruce Springsteen oftentimes plays, and he played this year. And I reached out to them, as per my history of, like, the successful bands that I've been in, and wound up having the premiere show of Least of Thieves at the Stone Pony as part of their festival, and then gave a speech at the Count Basie Theater at their main event the following evening. Gave the speech after Bruce Springsteen played, which was amazing. I was like, I can't believe I have to follow up Bruce Springsteen right now. But it was just incredible. And, we're people that are fine. I just thought it was very interesting that it's like, we're obviously people that want to be doing something of service, and being a part of something, and helping people. And it's just interesting that you found it through the running and through that organization. And then I found it through this organization, through the music and things like that.
I see this common kind of thread from the both of you, how you've gotten a lot of perspective out of your sobriety, and it's really seemed to have helped you in a way that, maybe wasn't intended originally, but it seems to be like this extra byproduct of positive kind of output for you guys.
I actually thought going into sobriety, well, I feel like I don't want to exist. Like, that's the reality. Is I was very, very overwhelmed, hopeless. I cried for like 2 months of the beginning of my sobriety, and what I thought was going to be hopeless and boring, just blasted light into my life. And as a person who was, doing comedy and acting and things like that, is it allowed me, and you can probably speak to this as well, Josh, as being somebody who is creator, whether that be comedy or drama or stories or writing, what people want to see is authenticity. And drugs and alcohol mask that authenticity. I was running away from things that I was worried about myself. And in creativity, when I'm able to show up fully, that's when I can actually connect and make something that is different, that may connect. So that's where really I found sobriety was so much more than just quitting one thing. It was getting in touch with so many other things, which just blasted light and love into my life in a way that I didn't expect. And the ability to work and to give back is only because I think somebody out there may think the same as me, that it's going to be terrible, that it's the end of fun, that there's no more joy. And I thought that as well, and that has not been the case. It's been the most joyful, happy, um, not always, it's not like there isn't sadness and grief in difficult times, but I have hope in my life. That doesn't go away, and I know I can pick up the phone and call somebody when I'm when I when I'm feeling like I'm overwhelmed or can't handle things. So I'm interested in that for you as well, Josh.
The authenticity that you're talking about, that is what's brought me into facilitating groups. I think people are really drawn to my groups and get something out of them because of that authenticity. Because I come in and I'm like, I'm messed up. These are my flaws. These are my faults. Like I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And I joke about it, right? And it's like, but once we admit that we don't know, once we admit that we don't know, that leaves room to be able to find the answer instead of thinking that we know in whatever area it is. I fear, stepping into my truest potential and what my actual purpose is on deeper levels. It's easier to stay small. It's easier to stay hidden. It's easier to shut down and to not open up. And sometimes it's not just, okay, so let's get vulnerable, let's open up. I mean, these things are like, I don't even know that it's happening, or I'm stonewalling entirely. And my heart is just shut down because it's such defense mechanisms that have kept me surviving in my life under tremendous difficulties and things like that. And to change them is harrowing, but when I start to shift those things and to soften, I mean, I don't even know what's happened. Like for years, I mentioned earlier about being a sergeant on someone else's battlefield instead of a general on my own. I had never written a whole song. I'd always been like writing with other people or written riffs or things like that. And then, where was this album? I'm really proud of. I think it's beautiful. I'm really, I say that with, a sense of hopefully humility and grace, that it's not just an ego thing, but I'm I was able to do it. I was able to sing. They took the microphone away from me when I was on tour, when I sang backup, because I sang so poorly. And now I'm lead singing. I don't know what gave me the gall or the nerve to like step into that, but it's exactly what we're talking about. It's really, the alcohol is but a symptom of the issues that are underneath, that are blocking us from actually living our truest life. So, they talk about a life beyond your wildest dreams is a phrase that is talked about in recovery. And so, it doesn't mean that I'm going to have yachts and, with fireworks or whatever, fancy cars and stuff like that. It means both, because it's not just I'm happy with nothing, but it is a practice of contentment, of grateful for what I have, and moving into a space then to also step into my fullness of my life. If that means accepting whatever that is, if whatever my purpose or, the action is to take in this world, that I have the courage to do that.
It's probably my favorite quote. It was one that early on in sobriety, I went into an acting class and a teacher brought it up and I'd never heard it before. And it resonated so hard because I was sober and trying this new thing. And it's that Marianne Williamson quote, which is, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And then it goes on, but it's probably one of the most beautiful quotes, and one that I have to keep checking down into because I often want to play small. And like you said, that second background person when thinking that who am I to step into that light? But each of us have a light, and somebody else, not everybody, maybe not everybody will resonate with that, but somebody needs to hear that. And that's the same with this story. As you said, if it goes nowhere else, it has touched you at this point. And I've heard that a couple of times. And how beautiful even to impact one life. If you get to do that beyond that, wow. And I think that's where that gratitude comes from, is content with, look at how amazing it is to just have gratitude and be okay where we are. Yeah, there's all these things that we could talk about being wrong, but what do we look at that's right now, and the beauty that we have, and being able to impact a life like we're all doing on this screen in some way. If somebody hears that and that brings a little bit of light into their life, what a beautiful thing to be able to do.
Hey everyone. During this episode, we talk about two very important organizations in the Parkinson's community. We just wanted to take a minute to shine a light on them. The first one is the KIRK Gibson Foundation for Parkinson's. You can learn more about them by going to kirkgibsonfoundation.org. We also talk about the Light of Day Foundation, and you can learn more about them by going to lightofday.org. Please seek them out and support them however you can. Thank you. So, Josh, I just wanted to ask you about, because, you talk about having all of these opportunities with support and your fiance and everybody you've been able to lean on. And I find it incredibly interesting that you also work as a spiritual advisor and offer support to others. And I want to know, having that experience, how that impacts your kind of reception of getting support yourself.
That's actually a very good question. It's a poignant point, because I think that's part of the issue that was happening last year, was that I was not recognizing, I'm actually in between therapists right now, but I stay in therapy. I believe in it, no matter what, for myself. Wherever I am, it's like there's always something that I need to process, or at least thus far in my life, I've seen that in my recovery. And I think that I didn't realize how much I was shouldering last year. And now I see the warning signs in different ways. Like in my early recovery, everything was just, so it was just chaos, right? So it was, just hair on fire and down the toboggan ride. I don't know what the hell I'm saying, but, and now it was like, because I'm much more grounded and centered and steady, I think it could have been much more obvious to me. It's like now I look at those signs when I start to see, if I'm walking across the street and start to think that it would be better if I got hit by a car, maybe that's an indication that something's wrong and I need to talk to somebody. And, but I was anyway. So I have to just be mindful of that, because I feel like they talk about it, in terms of it being dangerous, getting into the field and getting paid to do something. It's a different thing than doing service. It's a beautiful space to be at, helping people and to be of service to people. But it's, I also do it as a job, and, so that it's, not necessarily like, well, I can not answer this call right now or something like that. Like I have to show up and I have to be there. And that's incredibly rewarding. And also sometimes it's really not, to be honest with you. Sometimes it's really freaking thankless. And it's hard when I'm trying to share what is beautiful information or a beautiful practice or something that has transformed my life and has been transforming lives for some of the practices for thousands of years, let's say, and nobody cares because they're forced to be there and they're on their phone and things like that. And you can see I have a little edge in my voice because it can be difficult at times. So, then when you get a really great group, or if, there's certain places that I go to where, it's just the culture of the particular place, or the way they manage whatever choices they make to make that work with all the different subtleties. I get a really great group where it's really powerful and it's so much more rewarding in that way. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. But I have to make sure that I'm not using that as an excuse to think that I'm in my recovery all the time and aware of things, because I'm constantly talking about these concepts is very different than actually experiencing them and getting the help myself. And I need to make sure that I stay in that sense of help. And I'm a little bit hypocritical because, like I said, I'm in between therapists right now, so I should probably be looking for one.
Well, I think having the awareness of it as well is, says a lot.
Yeah, and I make sure that I do have my network of people, and I do call and I do talk. But a lot of times I didn't even know. I would get to my therapist's office and feel okay, and then just get in there and start talking and just start sobbing, crying. And I didn't even know I was holding on to stuff. So I know that it's valuable for me to have that space so that I know, like, I can go there and just start talking. And if something needs to come out, it's a safe space for me to be able to do that. Right. And it's different. it's different when it's even, a meeting that I go to and, that's a safe space for me. It's different when it's a professional who I'm paying to actually sit there and help me in some way. And so I don't have to feel bad about it, or I don't have to, it's powerful to even have that, not a demand, but an expectation that, that they're there for that, and that creates the space for me to be able to not feel like I'm taking too much of their time or anything like that, or burdening them.
It seems like it also seems to give you some perspective in relation to like your fiance, her being a support person for you. And at least this is how I'm reading it, is that it seems like you kind of are able to kind of clock that, and because you also perform that function for others, which I think is very helpful.
No, she's just drilled that into me. This is why she's brought me aware. She's been actually just, aside from being, a care partner and things like that with Parkinson's, she's just been just such an incredible partner in life, to teach me so many things, that I didn't have awareness of. I mean, it's really, we have it modeled to us, and like she modeled boundaries, and, I use everything that she teaches me in all of my groups. That's all I do is go, and I'm able to do what I do because I've actually learned it all from her. I'm like, right, here's the productive way of communicating. And,
What's her name?
Megan. Yeah, she's actually on in Least of Thieves. Well, she's on the record, which is self-titled Least of Thieves. There's one song she sings lead on, Shut Up and Cry, and many other songs that she does a lot of backup and stuff like that.
Actually, I do want to step backwards for 1 second, if you'll humor me. You'd mentioned that you discovered that your music was a trigger. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the playing of music was a trigger because I was not able to play as well anymore. So that was, when she asked me what my coping mechanisms were, and I was just rattling them off, it was a recognition that actually I play music as a part of what I do, because one of the groups that I lead is a meditation where I sing and play a song in the beginning and at the end of the meditation. And so on a regular basis throughout the week, I'm playing and have to play, as opposed to just, for myself or recording or something like that at my own time. It's part of the work that I do. So when I'm having a rough day and I'm having an off day, with the Parkinson's, and it's, hard for me to just play a simple 3-chord thing when I was, not to toot my own horn, but toot. I was a hell of a freaking bass player, and very complicated, intricate playing. And now to struggle with playing like a simple chord at times, I can still make my way through it, but it's humbling for sure. So that's where the playing of the music is actually it can be a trigger as opposed to a coping mechanism.
My dad, my dad did magic and juggling shows. He started when I was in 4th grade. I did a little show, and then he started a business. He was doing cartography and things like that before, but he really leaned into doing the magic and juggling shows. And he was really good with kids, so he would go, daycare centers, in school shows and things like that. And they absolutely loved him, and he loved doing it. When you find something like your perfect job, that was his. And that was incredibly difficult for him as he lost the ability to do the sleight of hand, which is a lot of fine motor skills. And then, of course, juggling and things like that. He tried to hold on to that for as long as he could. But it was a very difficult day when he realized he had to stop doing shows, and he had to cancel whatever he had set up. Because it was becoming so noticeable. And that was probably one of the more difficult things to watch, was to see him have to give that up. And that's where the helplessness of, like, I couldn't do anything for him in that space other than be there. And it's tough to lose those things. He was learning to play the guitar himself too, and then, wasn't able to continue on that. And I just got a guitar for my birthday, which I brought to the hotel because I've been playing along. And as I'm doing it, I think about that. And one of the things, to be honest, is that I don't always like to share or bring up is like, I think about what if I, was diagnosed. He was like 50 something when he was diagnosed. I'm 46. And it's we've talked about that. I talked about that when he was um when we did the documentary when he was alive as well, was, if that were the case, he didn't know about it. And um I as I play the guitar, that becomes more, what if I learn this and within a couple of years I'm not able to progress? And I think about that kind of stuff. So it is something, as I've played with this one and remember my dad doing that, is those thoughts come into my head. There's no point to make or anything other than, those are times when it's just quiet and it gets very real as to some of those fears or some of those, things that I relate to my dad or have empathy for him or wish that I could change. It's like I get a flood of a lot of those things. And so I relate to a lot of what you said there.
There's a lot of, they talk about grief with Parkinson's, and it's a constant grieving because you're constantly progressing and constantly losing things that were once defining you as a human being in some ways. And, that's a really hard thing. Like for now, it's the biggest, most obvious thing of playing music, but, when it gets subtler and subtler, or more overt, actually, but deeper and deeper aspects of who I am. Not just the obvious one of a musician, but when it's, somebody made a joke about opening they weren't making a joke about Parkinson's. They were making a joke about opening a can of peanut butter for my partner or whatever. And I was like, oh wow, these little things that are defined for me as a man, which there's a whole nother aspect of that, and defining what makes you a man. It's not opening up a jar of peanut butter, but yet sometimes those little small things can actually make me feel needed in some ways. And right, so where's my value being placed? And so there's this constant grieving, and so that's the whole process of Parkinson's is a process of grief. There's a saying in recovery that they talk about that is getting right sized. I don't know if you've ever heard that. And when I came into recovery, I thought that getting right sized was going to mean that they were going to crush me down. And maybe that is for some other people, but my getting right sized was actually building myself up and actually stepping into with the potential that I really did have and the magnitude of who I am as a human being, with an ego aside. So it's like actually recognizing that there's a purpose to who I am and what I can do with the world. And then grieving the loss of all that.
Yeah, and in reality, I think that what Josh said too, I had that same thing about becoming right-sized or being in the middle. I was like, ugh, what is that? I don't want to be what is being in the middle? But like him, what I found is the same. That's why that quote from Marianne Williamson stands out so much to me, is because it kind of takes what I had been, had taught or I had learned or whatever I picked up as to what humility is being, being nothing, but also what I learned in sobriety. And this became clear when I was doing affirmations. Me and my buddy were writing some affirmations, and I had incredible difficulty with it. I was like struggling to write 5 things down. And that just made me go, oh, well, that probably shouldn't be that way. I think kindly about other people. I build people up all the time. I love talking with people and finding things special about others. And I also thought in my head, right now, I could write 2 pages nonstop without picking up my pen about everything that I think is wrong with me or the shortcomings or what I wish I would be doing, but I'm not doing. I knew I could write those so quickly, but here I was having trouble bringing up 5 affirmations. And I went, well, there we go. There's where the work is I shouldn't have all of this love and care for other people and not have it for myself. And it goes back to that point of you can't give what you don't have. So it just through recovery showed a lot of these things of how to show up for yourself so that you can show up for others. And, for me, it was reframing that wasn't selfish, that was me taking care of myself, allowed me to be there for other people. And then you talked about the time is, the reality is we have a limited amount of time. The sooner that I can get with that and accept it and come to terms with that, the better I have the ability to appreciate and take, to not take advantage, because that's not what it is, but just embrace what the reality is. It's me coming to truth with what I would like things to be and how they are. And that again goes back to that serenity prayer of there's 2 parts that I was like, mostly I think what happens is, and for me certainly is, the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. So that one I think gets a lot of power. And then the second part of that gets, I don't think as much due power, which is the courage to change the things that I can. We're not always in a state of I got to accept everything. No, there's also courage that when I need to change, and that change may not be, for me, it was an external, I need to go out and do this, because that was easy for me to want to do. I got to do these things. If you told me to get sober, I have to walk from Michigan to LA, I would do that easier than letting go. So the change for me was learning how to let go and accept. And that was the courage to be able to do that. And Josh hit on that earlier, is there is a lot of fear in between that. What if I give that up? Who am I? Or does it mean all of this, like I've been down the wrong trail for years, now I got to turn back around? And then what if I pick the wrong route again? So it's like, what if I just, yeah. So I don't, that's the second part of that, is courage to change the things I can. And then the wisdom to know the difference. And that's not unfortunately, punch a button and I get to have that. I have to do that every single day, which wish I could just graduate, but you can't. And I did switch cameras because this one died out. So
I certainly think we could probably do a whole season of podcasts with all the collected knowledge that you guys have had and stuff. But in closing, I'd like to just ask Josh. Obviously, Least of Thieves is a thing that you're still doing. Go to the website, get their album. It's fantastic. We love our theme song so much. So tell me about what's coming up for you, Josh.
I've taken it one day at a time. The opening out of the gate was a powerful opening with the debut show as Light of Day organization, like I said, and then the speech I was giving. And so associating with Light of Day is something I'm looking forward to. I'm just going back into the studio and recording some newer songs and things like that, and it's kind of like concurrently happening. It's not even just necessarily going back into the studio, but just going to keep moving forward and recording stuff. I don't have any shows lined up at the moment. I'm allowing grace to move through it and space to move through it and things like that, and focusing on work and things like that right now. And so I've learned in my time I put too much effort in. Talking about time, it's a difficult thing, time awareness and saying there's a limited amount of time, and I don't want that. I have to be careful of that causing me, like I have to do this now, and which is also it is very present. It's here and now, with the fact of losing my ability to play, but that was causing me, like, I need to record as much as possible. I need to do this, and it's like, okay, I just need to proceed, just one foot in front of the other. So we'll see. I know that I'm still, connected with Light of Day, so I'll probably be, if nothing else, playing their, shows, at least their Winterfest every year or something like that is a huge thing to be a part of. So we'll see where it goes from there. But, on the socials, on Instagram, Least of Thieves, like you mentioned, there's, digital downloads and vinyl and CDs and hats and shirts, and this isn't here for this reason, but shameless plug of like Least of Thieves beanies.
How coincidental.
And stuff like that. Isn't that convenient?
Sweet merch. Get the merch. Buy the merch. No, we love your music, and keep going. I look forward to hearing more, and thank you so much for being generous with your time and telling your story. And I feel like there's so much more to talk about. So hopefully we can have you back at some point.
I agree. It was really, really wonderful to speak with you. Glad that the podcast put us together, and I agree with Mike. I think we definitely would be good to have you back and talk about this as we go forward. We have a lot in common, so I truly, truly appreciated the conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love that. Thank you for all that you guys are doing. It's really, it's like I said, it's already made an impact. So thank you.
Thanks again, Josh. If you're listening, please feel free to leave a comment. Always, we ask, like, share, subscribe. We would love to build the community, and much more to come. So we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Thanks so much for joining us today for part 2 of our conversation with Josh Ansley. We are so grateful to Josh for him sharing his story with us, and also giving us an amazing podcast theme song. Thank you, Josh. Also, if this episode clicked with you, please consider sharing it. Also, like and subscribe so you can hear future episodes. And also, the 2 organizations we spoke about today, the Kirk Gibson Foundation for Parkinson's and the Light of Day Foundation. Please seek them out and support them however you can. They are doing amazing work in the Parkinson's community. And lastly, thank you to you for listening. We appreciate you and look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.